Dave Andron, co-creator of Snowfall, which just wrapped its fourth season last month. I think most, if not all, fans agree that this was your best season yet. There was an urgency to it that I think wasn't really in the first three, and so many things came to a head. So how do you guys look back on season 4?
Yeah, I mean, look, a very strange season because of the pandemic kind of cutting us down mid-production. I think, to speak to your point, it probably is our most successful. The show started out awfully ambitious, trying to tell a lot of different stories in a lot of places. And as we've kind of narrowed our focus, the show seems to have gotten better. And I like to think season 4 was kind of the best mix we've had so far of, still making the points we want to make about the crack epidemic and what it was and how it was allowed to happen. And then just keeping the plotting tight and making things move forward and putting the characters in tough spots.
Mm-hmm. Like season 4 was a lot more focused on South Central and the escalating gang wars and CIA. So what went into that decision to streamline the narrative?
The streamlining is something that's kind of happened. It's just evolved over the course of the 4 seasons, where we started out really ambitious with a lot of different, trying to tell the story of East LA, in addition to everything else. And the kind of narrowing of the focus on South Central was just something that naturally kind of happened as it gravitated towards Franklin. He's the center of the show, and his world should be the center of the show. The gang wars and getting into more of the violence, it was just something that we, inevitably were going to get into. It's just part of the evolution of South Central and the changing of a neighborhood, which is, at its core, the story is about the young man, but it's also really about the transformation of a neighborhood. How did it go from a tough working class neighborhood to a war zone in 3 years?
Mm-hmm. Well, like you mentioned, you guys were in the middle of production when COVID hit and you had to shut down. So at one point in the season was that, and how did that impact the rest of the season? And what did you guys do in the hiatus, I guess, during lockdown? Like, did you tweak any scripts or try to fine tune anything?
We did. I mean, we shut down about halfway through the 4th episode. So if there was any silver lining in all this, it was that all of a sudden we had 6 months to kind of rework the last 5 scripts or so, which is an incredible, bizarrely an incredible gift to kind of get in the world of TV, where you're always kind of racing the clock and the train's always bearing down on you. And then, of course, it was all the challenges of trying to figure out how to get back up and get back up safely. But we managed to kind of figure that out and successfully complete the run. And sure, look, things like everybody else, right? We had to rewrite big party scenes and things like that, and characters, unfortunately, things got cut. But it was all in the service, I think, of making it, kind of forcing us to really examine and make it better. And I think that shows when you see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, were there any major changes you remember besides just kind of cutting out scenes with big crowds or a lot of people, and anything narratively?
Well, I will say there was a whole part of the storyline was one of our characters is involved in a drive-by and accidentally kills a kid and has to kind of go and hide out. And we had a kind of whole storyline where he was going to go hang out with another one of our characters named Rob Volpe, who lives out in the valley. And we were excited about the odd couple relationship of these two guys and being in the world in the valley and being Rob. And the house we used, we couldn't shoot right. They didn't want to rent it out to us to shoot in. And so there were a number of other kind of complicating factors. So we just, built an apartment on our stage and had him hiding out in an apartment. And it was a lot of things like that. I mean, it didn't, we were narratively kind of able to do big picture what we wanted to do, but it was just stuff like that where we lost little fun things that I think would have added to the atmosphere and been fun for the audience.
Mm-hmm. You guys kind of took Franklin down a peg this season. He's always been ambitious and he thinks he can control things. And, this season he tries to get between Scully and Amboy and it backfires. And it always felt like he was a step behind and, not just because he was using a cane, but he was more vulnerable this season. But by the end, he gets his mojo back and he confronts Melody, puts the cane down and walks off. So can you talk about laying out the arc for him this season?
Yeah, I mean, we knew we wanted to start him. We wanted to start him in a place where he was, as you point out, kind of hurt and wounded, and not just physically, right? If you're in kind of constant chronic pain, you're maybe not thinking as clearly as you should be. You're making maybe not the best decisions. But he's also trying to figure out who he's going to be in the midst of all this rising violence, right? We wanted to put him to a choice in the first episode as he's watching these two gangs that he has relationships with both sides, right? He deals to both of them, and watching the violence ramp up, and to make the choice, right? Am I going to just sit by and let this happen and stay out of it, which might have been the smarter choice, but he's not kind of ready to accept it, right? So there's one in control, and then there's also, at his heart, he's kind of a businessman. He knows the violence is bad for business and it's bad for his soul. And so we made the choice to have him try to step into the middle of that and solve it, right? A brutal way of solving it, but long run, he thought it would be better. And of course it goes kind of spectacularly wrong. And he'll never do it again, right? He'll never stick his neck out in that way, which is part of the evolution of the character. It's not just, right, more brutal, colder, all that stuff. It's just, I know what happens now if I try to fix anything. I just have to take care of me and mine.
Mm-hmm. John Singleton passed away shortly before season 3 premiered. So what was it like working on this season without him? And did you guys ever talk about, where you wanted the story to go in future seasons and how you might want it to end?
Yeah, I mean, we talked, yes, right. We talked a lot about what we knew the show to be about, kind of at its core. And so while we never talked specifics about exactly where all these characters would end up, which now I wish we talked more about, I think between myself and all the other writers, we had a sense of what he loved all the time in the room, the things that got him excited, the things that he really wanted, that were important to him, that he wanted to make sure we were hitting. But yeah, coming back without him was so strange. Sad to not have that guy who was very much that kind of godfather figure, and everybody loved him, and it was the story he had spent his life telling. And I think genuinely believe he'd be really, really proud of kind of what it's become and how far it's grown. And that makes, I think, all of us take a lot of kind of comfort in knowing that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you guys have been renewed for a 5th season. What can you tease about what we can expect? We do have some loose ends and some cliffhangers from season 4, like with Alton and Teddy. So,
yeah, I will say we're just about a week now into the season 5 writers' room, so it's fairly big and blue sky at this point. So I certainly don't want to say anything that isn't going to happen. I will say that we start to get into a really difficult time, right, for South Central. There's we're going to probably, it looks like, jump forward a little bit in time, more than we have maybe in the past, to get into kind of the meat of 1986, when the violence was really ramping up, when you really started to feel the full militarization of the LAPD, when the war on drugs kind of was on its way to reaching its apex. And then this kind of pop culture explosion that was brimming in South Central. The rise of gangster rap, and you had Straight Outta Compton, and those things getting ready to kind of drop and blow up, and like this huge sea change moment for the neighborhood. And so without getting into too much character stuff, I will just say, from the standpoint of history and kind of where we are in the arc of this thing, it's a really exciting time for us to plop our characters into and see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're an alum of Justified, as everyone can see from the poster behind you. Can we get Timothy Oliphant and Walton Goggins on next season?
Yes, happy to help facilitate in whatever way to get to. I don't know if I can get them into our Snowfall world, but if you want to get them on a panel, we can certainly make that happen. And it's out there now. It's out there now that we're trying to figure out kind of a rebooted, limited season of Justified, which has been just a blast to get back into that room with a bunch of the alums and try to figure out where is Raylan all these years later, and look, how does an old school gunslinger fit into the world of today, right? Which is such a different world than it was certainly in 2010 or whatever, when they did the pilot, in 2015 when we ended the show. And it's yielded some pretty interesting discussions. So we're hoping we get to keep moving that ball forward.
Can't wait for that. Well, Dave, thanks so much for your time. It was great speaking with you, and we'll see you back in a little bit.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Joyce.
Thank you.